All right. Hi, Zemira, Richie, Rune. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Vonvo.com. It is February 9th. Um, we're here to talk about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Just before we begin, I wanted to make all three of you aware of two different things. The first is that right now I am recording this video, and after the discussion is over, oh no, Rune just left. That's okay. He'll jump back in a moment, I'm sure. But after the discussion is over, um, I'll be posting this video to YouTube. Is that okay with both of you?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then just the only other thing to bring up is that uh, basically, if anyone else comes into the room, and Rune will be coming back in shortly, I'm sure. We just ask that there not be any personal attacks against anyone, and that we keep the conversation, both civil and valuable. Are you guys both fine with those ground rules?
Very much so, yes.
Okay, great.
No problem.
All right, awesome. So why don't we start off with both of you just giving us a brief background of yourself. Zemira, if you want to start, and then Richie, this is just so that our viewers know exactly who you are and what you're all about. So Zemira, you want to just go ahead quickly?
Yes, my name is Zemira Elinatan, and I am the Executive Director of International Unity for Equality, a human rights organization specifically working on issues of bonded labor in India and Pakistan. In addition, I am an administrator in the Facebook group Like for Israel India. So my work is very much involved in dealing with protecting the rights of religious minorities in Muslim lands.
Great. And I'm just speaking to Rune quickly through Facebook. He's coming back into the room now. But go ahead, Richie, and then we'll fit Rune in after once he rejoins. Go ahead, Richie.
Okay, first of all, I'd say that there's it's back on Zemira's voice, and it's very difficult to understand what she's saying because she's repeating everything twice. I know she's not, but that's what it comes over. Okay, my name is Richie. I'm in international marketing. I live in the UK. I travel extensively to Arab countries. I have lived in Israel, and I've also been in Dubai. I do travel a lot to North Africa, to Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Libya, and I've got a lot of history with the Middle East. Happy to contribute in any way I can.
Great. And Rune, we got started a little bit. We were just giving each of us were just giving backgrounds on one another for our viewers and people watching. Would you mind just giving everyone a quick background of yourself?
Yeah, I'm an English lecturer in Denmark who has been I've been active in the BDS movement in Denmark, and I've traveled to Palestine several times as an activist. Lived in El Khalil and Hebron and Naples, also in Jerusalem during the last couple of years. So, although I've been following the conflict, actually seeing it on the ground is pretty new to me. It's only been the last couple of years that I've done that.
Great. Great, guys. And just so you know, I'm like I don't know if you hear the echo when I unmute myself, but I'm just like going back and forth, muting and unmuting myself. So if there's a second where you don't hear me for a second, it's probably just because I forgot to unmute myself. But what I was going to say is, what I wanted this discussion to primarily be about was solutions relative to this discussion. And how we work towards some solutions, and we have a nice diverse round table of speakers here. So ultimately, I guess we can get started, and obviously, any differences that come up in each other's opinions, we can surely address. But ultimately, I guess we'll start off with, Zemira. What do you see right now as the major, roadblock in any sort of peace solution between Israelis and Palestinians? And we can get each one of your takes on, what you see as the major roadblock right now preventing peace right now.
Okay. My answer to this question would be the fact that when we receive information about the conflict from either side, much of the public is not hearing the actual facts of the issue. They hear the emotional response, less of an objective view and more of an emotional response. I feel that the reaction to problems usually is with violence rather than with peaceful dialogue and real concrete effort to come to the negotiating table on both sides to resolve this conflict in a way that it will bring a future that will be beneficial for both peoples, where both peoples will benefit in a positive manner, not just one people dominating over another group.
Great. Rune, what exactly do you feel is the major roadblocks preventing peace between both peoples right now?
I would have to say that I think that the major problem is that you don't have a situation where a negotiation can take place, and the reason for that is that the Zionist dream of a greater Israel is being pushed forth, and you can say that the longer peace is postponed, the further it's pushing forth. It's doing fine. So to be a little bit cynical, it sounds very radical to say that one side doesn't want peace. It sounds very aggressive, but it certainly looks like that. And we've seen the situations from the last decade. We know now from the Palestine paper that the Palestinians were willing to practically everything. They were willing to accept the Bantustan solution, to let go of the right of return, etc. And still it wasn't enough for the Israelis. It's this old 30s tactic of always wanting more, because the negotiations weren't meant to succeed. As long as there's no peace, the ethnic cleansing that I'm sure we can all agree takes place at the moment will also will proceed. So
all right,
that to me is the main problem.
Oh.
One party is not doesn't have an interest in peace.
Okay, and Richie, would you mind sharing with us your take on this situation?
Unfortunately, I didn't hear Rune's dissertation. I would say my position is. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a bit unclear. You have to slowly, please.
Yeah, and Richie, did you say you didn't hear Rune at all, or you just heard him in pieces?
You disappeared, Max, and then you got frozen, and then the first part of Rune's dissertation I didn't hear at all, and now I hear a big echo on my voice, and on Rune's as well. But I would say my position is probably just about 180 degrees from Rune's, in that from where I stand and from where I see the situation. I think the major problem or the feeling in Israel is that they feel they don't have a partner for peace in any shape or form. When you've basically got the other side who don't recognise your right to exist. How can you make peace with somebody who is dedicated to your destruction? I don't understand how you can make peace with a group like that. And I'd really appreciate hearing his take on that.
Go ahead, Rune.
you have, this is a classic Zionist argument, of course, that Israel's right to exist is not recognized by the Palestinians. On the ground, Palestine's right to exist is being diminished by like 10 homes a day. This is actually taking place. To discuss something on the grounds of because of a principle, to me, is very problematic. Israel's right to exist, and by the way, Hamas, which is considered the extreme part of Palestinian political life in terms of who has influence, has repeatedly said that it was willing to solve the conflict within the 1967 borders. Now, after Operation Cast Lead, after Operation Pillar of Cloud, the rhetoric has become more radicalized once more. But this was actually the position for a long time, even by Hamas. And under international law, they're not obliged to recognize Israel's right to exist. Gandhi, as Norman Finkelstein has pointed out, Gandhi said, I accept the reality of Pakistan, but I don't accept the legitimacy of Pakistan. But that doesn't mean you can't negotiate. And as we know, Fatah and Arafat long ago accepted Israel's right to exist.
Right. Sorry about that. I was on mute again.
Did anybody hear this?
Yeah, I hear you great.
Okay.
Yes, I heard it.
Great.
I heard it. No problem.
Zemira, would you like to respond to what both gentlemen were just stating, and your take on it from your end?
Well, firstly, I'm not comfortable with the when Rune mentions Zionist, and that also is aggressive. And I think the issue is more of Jewish homeland. But not only for Jews. As you see in Israeli life, Israel has accepted many other different cultures into their society. And they have voting rights, they have votes, they have representation in the government. And Israelis are also suffering by being forced from their homes, which in the Israeli perspective are Jewish homeland. So the Palestinians have the same claim in their side, but I think when the term Zionist is used, it's very aggressive, and Jews were dispersed from the world and have a right to return to their homeland. There has been a consistent Jewish presence in Israel for 3,000 years. And without going back into the history, I think to move forward in peace is to stay away from the derogatory terms and look for common ground. And look for.
I'm sorry. I'm awful. I have to interrupt you because I have to ask: do you consider Zionist a derogatory term? Derogatory term, and you're
in the way I think that in the way that you mentioned, Rune, I don't think the term itself is derogatory. No, but I think in the way that you use the term, it was not. I didn't feel comfortable with it, and I think she is absolutely correct in the fact that Israel is looking for a willing partner for peace, and I think that both sides must recognize each other's existence in order for a viable peace to occur.
Right.
We have to acknowledge at this point that it was until the Oslo peace process in 1996, no Israeli politician of consequence had actually expressed that Palestinians had a right to a state in Palestine. this only happened at the point where the West Bank was so colonized that no viable state was truly possible. Then they said, okay, now we're going to start negotiating. So this question of existence, where you have a term on one side, and on the other side you have what you call facts on the ground, creating greater Israel every day, demolishing Palestinian homes every day. That's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is that the rhetoric has changed from recognizing Israel as a Jewish state, which in principle would be the same as claiming that the 20% of the population in Israel that are Palestinians wouldn't have equal rights, as indeed they don't have now. They have voting rights, as you say, but they don't have the rights to the land. Most of the land is distributed by Jewish organizations, Jewish National Front, Zionist organizations. I'm sorry for using the term again, but they are. And therefore, it's a very segregated society. And you know that Arab communities are not being developed.
Right, Richie, would you like to jump in here? And I mean, if you wouldn't mind, addressing Rune's point, where Rune seems to be pretty adamant about the idea that Palestinians are losing their homes each day by these settlements. I mean, do you think he has a valid point there? In regards to then trying to foster a solution, and you've been around it for a while, so you could obviously, take. Go ahead.
I mean, I personally differ slightly from the Israeli right-wing view that settlement things are good and not an obstacle to peace. I think that it would have been sensible for Netanyahu to have stopped building in settlements a little while ago to try and give it some more. They did actually try. They stopped building for about 10 months, and all that Israel did in return was just a whole bunch of rockets. You have to understand that in the Camp David Accord, Israel actually gave up 98% of the West Bank, or agreed to give up 98% of the West Bank to the Palestinians. That was turned down by Arafat at the time. And this thing about the 1967 borders, I don't know if, I know you've been to Israel, you must understand that the 1967 borders is a completely unworkable solution to Israel. It means that Israel will become 9 kilometers wide at one point near Netanya. It's completely indefensible. There is no way. I mean, you could just lob any amount of rockets you like into Ben Gurion Airport from the West Bank. It is completely a nonsensical, in my opinion, position to accept the 1967 as a basis for anything, with all due respect.
Okay.
And in terms of Hamas, okay, I mean, you're saying, please just let me finish it. I understand what Gandhi said about he doesn't have to recognize the right of Israel, but Hamas doesn't even recognize Israel's presence. I mean, there are 100 videos on YouTube, you can go and watch them, where all the guys down there are saying, all we want is just to drive all the Jews into the sea. I mean, how do you make peace? I just don't understand how we can make, or Israel can make peace with somebody who's trying to kill you. How do you do that? How do you do that?
Yeah, but again, to separate, you have rhetoric on both sides. To start with the last point first. Netanyahu, the last 2 times he went to the negotiating table, he literally looked over his shoulder and said, I'm not going to give them anything. And he didn't. Israel is killing Palestinians practically daily. Not saying they want to do it, they're actually killing Palestinians. Now, about Israel being indefensible, you have what is arguably the world's second strongest military power in a part of the world which is largely, except for the one generation back, hardware that's been sold to Arab countries by the United States with Israel's approval. You have states with practically no present generation military hardware, and a de facto demilitarized Palestinian area is one thing. The other thing is the offer that was made to Arafat was 80% of the land that was Palestinian at the time The Jordan Valley would still be militarized. There would still be segregated road through the area. They wouldn't have their own airspace. In Gaza, they wouldn't even have their own territorial water. So you have de facto Palestine, which is surrounded by and sort of worked into a greater Israel. And even Arafat couldn't have accepted that. He wouldn't have been led for anything he'd done that. So this is one of these great myths, the myth of the great offer, or the myth of the missed opportunity, which was really ultimately a Bantustan solution.
Go ahead, Zemira.
Yes.
Do you want to chime in here? You know, with
Zemira, did you hear what Rune said? I'm not sure. I missed a lot of it. A lot of breaking up on Rune's conversation.
Zemira, did you hear everything?
What part?
Okay, go ahead, Rune, if you want to repeat for Richie.
Which
No,
what
I
part
got some of it.
did you hear?
A lot of it,
All right, so I think he got majority of it. Zemira, what is your take on this? On what some of Rune said, but can you chime in here on the different rhetoric that comes from each side? I mean, that word seems to be brought up over and over again, and I'm interested to hear what both these two men are talking about, and do you see where each of them are coming from? Obviously, with a pro-Israeli stance, you see where probably Richie is coming from, but what about on Rune's end?
Well, I'm concerned when Rune says that Israelis are killing Palestinians daily, because I don't see that as a fact. I do see that Palestinians do often harass Jews when they are coming from services, from prayer. I do see that there is a lot of rock hurling at vehicles that cause fatal accidents and death. And this is where I go back to the accurate dissemination of information. I don't believe, or I have never seen, a daily killing of Palestinians. It's just not an accurate statement, in my opinion.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead,
Hello?
Rune. Go ahead, Rune.
Hello?
Yeah, do you hear me, Rune?
Okay, yeah, it's true. Palestinians are not being killed every day, but since you're mentioning violence going the other direction, I think maybe we should talk about proportion. Proportion is being done to Palestinians every day. Everyone who has lived in Hebron, who see the daily terror by settlers against the population of Hebron, those who happen to live within reach of Jewish settlers, the daily humiliation, the daily violence, and especially around the Shabbat, which is nearly always violent. As I would say, a realistic figure is a handful of Palestinians being killed by Israelis most months. Many are being jailed, many are being wounded. Especially the last couple of months, there's been a lot of Palestinian children jailed, a lot of the Palestinians wounded. You can see when you move around the West Bank how settlers are typically, I've witnessed this plenty of times, attacking Palestinians with impunity in front of soldiers, and attacking Israeli activists as well sometimes. So yes, there are reactions. Yes, rocks are being hurled. This certainly happened, mostly as a symbolic gesture against a much more massive oppression going on Israeli side. And this is it shouldn't be necessary to debate, the level of violence coming from each side, because it's so disproportionate.
Well, I think that the violence on both sides really is an obstacle to peace. And I do think that it's not disproportionate. I do feel that not in addition to the rock hurling, rocket response, things like that, are very aggressive. And when another nation would have that received, that would be considered an act of war around the world if rockets were coming into their country. I'm sorry. I'll finish my point,
sure.
If I may. I'm saying that the violence. When you say that violence is occurring on the Shabbat, I'm concerned about statement as well, because the Sabbath is a day of rest. It's a time of peace for Jewish people, and we do not attack or jail or kill people on the Sabbath. I really, really have a problem with that. There also, in Jewish law, according to Halacha, you do not murder. So it's a command, actually. So I'm very, very much concerned with any allegation that Palestinians are being killed on our Sabbath. It completely does not seem accurate or reasonable to me to hear something like that.
Okay, I'm sometimes forgetting some of your points, which is very frustrating. But about the Shabbat, this is something you can easily verify. You can ask Christian organizations. There are lots of different kind of groups present in Hebron, and they'll all tell you the same thing, that after the 7th of March on Saturday and the Shabbat is generally the most dangerous time to be a Palestinian or an activist in that area. I personally have been stoned, and a settler woman tried to run me down on Saturday night in Hebron. So this notion that Israelis
should is after Shabbat. Okay, the point is...
I said around the Shabbat.
Yes, but I want to be very clear. On the Sabbath, sundown to sundown, Friday night, and sundown Saturday is the Shabbat. So whatever you are saying
around the Shabbat.
Okay, so please,
it wasn't meant as a religious insult at all. I wasn't. That wasn't my point in any way.
I understand. I know, but I want you to be very, very aware and very clear that to say that it happened on the Shabbat.
I said especially around the Shabbat. That was a preposition I used.
Okay. All right.
And again, you have to understand, I think, that there is something horrible about this even Steven rhetoric in my book when you talk about the violence on both sides. Yes, ideally there should be no violence on any side. I certainly agree with that. But you have to understand that an occupation is violent. An occupation is violence in itself. And when you talk about rockets going into Israel, this is such a lovely analogy. What country would accept that? Well, if you use the analogy, they have to use the complete analogy. What would Israel do if another country was surrounding it and prohibiting goods from coming in and out and regularly bombing it? Wouldn't Israel respond? It would respond 100 times more violently than Hamas has ever done. That's the correct analogy, because when you're under siege, you're also the victim of an act of war. A siege is an act of war, just as a rocket is.
Right. So
but we have a disagreement on who is the occupier, I think, because when Jordan annexed Judea and Samaria, okay, that is not an Israeli occupation. That is an occupation from another nation.
This is history.
So, yes, this is history. But I am saying that I don't see that by leaving Gaza when Israel did and giving the Palestinian Authority sovereignty as surrounding them or harassing them in any way. I feel that Israelis withdrew from the area and did many actions to give them sovereignty and give them an opportunity to run a viable nation as a willing partner for peace.
But sovereignty means you have your own airspace. It means you have territorial waters. It means you control your own borders. Gaza has had none of the things, and at a tremendous cost haven't they had any other things. They've been blockaded. and it's even been proven by Israeli papers that Israeli military authorities were literally counting calories for Palestinians, regulating exactly how much nutrition would get into Gaza. So this has nothing to do with withdrawing from Gaza. We have to let go of this illusion that Israel ever withdrew from Gaza. No withdrawal ever looked like this.
Right.
By any normal international standards.
Right. So Richie, I think you wanted to come in here for a second before. What did you want to say? And I mean,
yeah, okay, I find it. I'm using the words to hear Rune say there's a blockade on Gaza when there are 15,000 tons of goods going in every week.
Everything I've said was established facts.
In the world. Okay, Israel has delivered, is still delivering to Gaza every week about 15,000 tons of goods. So you can't say there's a blockade on Gaza. They've decided to blockade the port of Gaza because they don't want Iranian ships docking with SAM ground-to-air missiles and things like that. I mean, you have to understand all of Gaza's electricity is supplied by Israel. Gaza has not paid a penny to the Israeli authorities. There are hundreds of millions of shekels. Israel would be quite within its right to cut off electricity to Gaza, but it hasn't. You know, even while rockets were coming over, they were still supplying humanitarian goods, still supplying electricity, still supplying that into the Gaza Authority. Now, I'm delighted to see that since the latest war ended, there hasn't been any violence down in the south. I mean, I hope it's a good sign.
There's been lots of violence, but not from the Palestinians. But there's been lots of Israeli violence. Israel has broken the ceasefire plenty of times. Palestinians have died in Gaza in areas that were included in the ceasefire. So when you say there's been no violence, you mean there's been no violence against Israelis?
What's your response to that?
Palestinians broke the ceasefire 20 minutes after the ceasefire was declared. So I'm not sure about that statement either.
Zemira, if I've seen people who have posted, certain things about Israel violating the ceasefire, this latest ceasefire, and I've seen posts about Palestinians. There have been some Palestinians. I don't know if it's under or over 70. For some reason, the number 70 kind of sticks in my head. But there's been some Palestinian casualties since the ceasefire, and there hasn't been any on the Israeli end. So the fact that there's been some casualties, and there are military troops inside of the West Bank and Gaza versus there's no Palestinian troops inside of Israel. Do you see that as a violation of the ceasefire, that there have been Palestinians killed, and do you think that that's right?
I don't think that any violation of a ceasefire is right. And as far as the number of Palestinians killed, I have not seen confirmed reports of the casualties. So for me to comment on, I would have to see confirmed reports of that.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Rune.
I'm sure the fact that Israel has broken the ceasefire many times is not controversial by any means. Just to return to the subject, yes, I heard about these goods being allowed into the Gaza Strip, but that doesn't change the fact that lots of stuff was not being allowed into the Gaza Strip, including building materials after Operation Cast Lead. It was only after the attack of the flotilla and due to American pressure that more food was being allowed into Gaza and some building material, but still not enough. So the fact that you're letting that there's some goods are being allowed into Gaza, it doesn't mean that there isn't a blockade. And to claim that there isn't a blockade against the evidence of the United Nations and Amnesty International, etc., even Human Rights Watch, who is basically a pro-Israeli organization, would acknowledge that there has been a blockade of Gaza during all this time. To say that there has been no blockade is very problematic, I think.
Right. So
the problematic thing is when weapons are smuggled into the country. The IDF has discovered many tunnels where weapons have been smuggled in. There is definite video recordings of weapons smuggled to Israel. So Israel has to base whatever action it does on its security. We don't want weapons smuggled into our country. We are helping by sending the goods and supplies, as Richie has explained, medical supplies, food, all of emergency supplies, and very quality items daily. So, if you had blockade, this would not, even these supplies would not be permitted to pass through in an official blockade. So there cannot be a blockade by any standard or any legal term that Israel is committing a blockade.
Right, Richie. Did you have a point that you wanted to make? Because if not, I was going to ask.
I was just going to say to Rune that it beggars belief that Rune thinks that human rights.
Richie, you have to speak really, really slowly. Please speak slowly because I can't hear you.
Richie,
what I'm saying
could you repeat,
actually
please?
beggars belief, Rune. Okay.
Richie, can you just speak slowly so that Rune can hear you? It was coming in a little choppy.
Okay. What I said was, it beggars belief to hear from Rune that the Human Rights Watch is a pro-Israeli organization. That's what I was going to say. I don't think I've ever read about a more anti-Semitic, virulent, anti-Zionist, anti-Israeli organization, apart from maybe the UN.
I have to agree with you, Richie.
Rune, do you have a...
Yeah, you see, it's very hard. We may have to find that we're approaching the point where this discussion has to end, because it's very hard to find common ground if the basic premises is that the UN, that Human Rights Watch, and probably, I'm sure, B'Tselem, and even though it's an Israeli organization, Amnesty International, must be... and as I understood, you lumped it together in a bunch as anti-Israel,
right,
anti-Semitic,
right. So
and
Rune,
what was the third thing?
Rune.
The UN as an anti-Semitic organization, very hard for me to digest. I wouldn't know where to begin to debate with you if that's your attitude.
Rune, and Richie and Zemira, I wanna jump in here because earlier today I was thinking, about what questions I wanted to ask people, and then, when I was thinking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, I kind of wanted to come up with some, tougher questions that, will help try and find some common ground between people who have, opposing opinions and viewpoints. And so I'm gonna ask all three of you a question, and I'm gonna ask you each individually. Zemira, do you think that the Israeli government, and this is a pre-question to a follow-up question. So, Zemira, do you think that the Israeli government is basically perfect in their handling of the Palestinian situation? Do you think everything that they do for the most part is fine with you? It's correct? Yes or no? Yes or no? Because then I'm gonna okay, no. Okay. And Rune, do you think everything that the Palestinian authorities that they do, Hamas, PLO, whichever, Fatah, whatever, do you think that their operations, their handling of their own people, and the and handling how to make peace with Israel, do you think that their operations are perfect? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. And Richie, same question to you, just on the Israeli front. Yes or no?
Can you just repeat the question, because you broke up when you asked Zemira?
Yeah, the question is do you think Israel's handling of the Palestinian territories and how they handle, the relationship with Palestinian people, do you think that, everything they do for the most part is correct? You approve of everything they do?
enough.
Okay, so knowing each of those things, Zemira, we're trying to find common ground here. What things do you want to see the Israeli government do differently? And be critical. What things do you want to see them do differently to find some common ground with people like Rune? What are they not doing properly? And be as critical so that people such as Rune can see that you're actually serious. About the stance that you take as a pro-Israeli supporter, but with your doubts. So go ahead.
Okay, I think I would like to see the government do everything for the interest of peace as it tries to do, and whatever mistakes that it makes, to continue every effort to correct those mistakes. But I would like to know what those mistakes are clearly, and when Israel does make concrete action to correct those mistakes, I would like the other side to acknowledge and appreciate those efforts, as Israeli government should appreciate the efforts of Palestinians who do the same. That's what I would like to see, more mutual acknowledgement of real viable efforts on both sides for this interest of peace.
Okay, so basically you're stating that, on the Israeli front, people such as Netanyahu, you do not see enough appreciation coming from, that more right-wing party of the Israeli government. You're not seeing the appreciation on their part to wanting to foster peace. You're just not seeing as much, and then when there is efforts to develop peace, you're just not seeing appreciation either. Is that correct? Yes or no?
I'm not. I would like to see more.
Okay, great. And Rune, how about on your end? What what things Palestinian related do you just really think need to be halted, need to be corrected, to really show that you can have some common ground with what Zemira is talking about and what she stands for?
I think in the Palestinian end, it's much about owning the final stages of statehood. But you have to acknowledge that the Palestinians have come a long way in terms of establishing a state with the means that they have. It's hard to be a state when the occupation makes your real economy not viable, and you're depending on the means of others, which, as you know, if you take the wrong decisions, those means will be retracted. And generally, the economy is very hard. You're forced to buy Israeli goods. There's all these colonial things going on. But when that is said, the statehood, it has to be smoother. It has to be sharper on human rights. It has to start having elections again. It has to have a political debate between entities like Hamas and Fatah, and to regain the respect of the Palestinian people. So there's a lot that could be done in the Palestinian end. I'm not sure Israel would find that Palestine would be more of a partner for peace, but because that's a very Israeli point of view.
So you're
but certainly to get the statehood to work again and the democratic process reestablished, that would be important to find a working relationship between the PA as its power base that seems corrupt and willing to do anything to hold on to power, which makes Hamas for many Palestinians the more attractive alternative.
So
because they're not willing to sell the country. I'm sorry, I have to speak slowly because my own echo keeps coming back at me.
Sorry about that. So what I was just gonna say, Rune. I mean, I know it's a semi tough question, and what I'm just gonna try and gather from that is basically you're saying, if I'm getting it correctly, is statehood on the behalf of Palestinians, having some sort of organization. With a real directed mission versus a lot of gray, being more black and white. Is that kind of to sum up your answer in 10 words or less? Is that kind of what you're stating?
Or a more transparent organizations where all the political parties can communicate on the political level.
Okay, great. Great. And so, now, Richie, would you mind, you've had a few minutes to think about it, what, actions, if you could be as specific as possible, do you see the Israeli government needing to take to find common ground between, people such as Rune and the, sides which they stand for?
Yeah, I just want to. Well, I used to live in Israel many years ago, and I look back on that time of Rabin and King Abdullah, King Hussein of Jordan, with a lot of emotion now. I mean, I used to live quite near the Green Line. I used to take my boys every Saturday morning over to play football with the people in the Palestinian village. We'd drink tea together, and everything was fantastic. If Zemira lives in Israel now, she'll know a place called Maccabim, which is where I used to live.
Yes.
And Maccabim was completely built by Palestinians.
I don't live in Israel now.
I mean, it's an amazing city, the second best place. Oh, you don't? Okay. But I mean, Maccabim is the second best place in Israel to live. And it was completely built by our Palestinian friends. I don't know where that attitude has gone now. I don't think it's a very difficult fix, basically. And here I differ from right wing of Netanyahu. Israel basically should stop building settlements and should declare, get some talks going based on Jerusalem being also the capital of a newly found Palestinian state. I'm talking about East Jerusalem. I differ a lot from Zionists on that point. I don't see any reason why Jerusalem can't be the capital of Israel. It always will be, but also the capital of a new Palestinian state. Hamas, who actually, just there was a report today that Hamas are now financially self-sufficient. They actually want to give some money to the PA in Ramallah now because they say they're financially self-sufficient, and it's the PA, Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, who's running out of money. But anyway, all Israelis have to see is some effort from the Palestinian side to make Israel believe that they actually do want peace. And the main problem I have, honestly, today is you do not see the voice of a moderate Islam in the Palestinian Authority standing up and saying, why are you, to the leaders, to Haniyeh and all these people, why are you, shouting about driving the Jews into the sea all the time? Israel is a country, it exists, it's not going to go away. Let's accept it and try and build a future together rather than based on confrontation.
Right. So, sorry. So
I see no reason why Palestinians and Israelis can't share the same land. They've got to live in peace. I have no problem at all in having Jerusalem be earmarked, Al-Quds, as the capital of Palestine. There's no problem with that. And I think that there's a lot of Israelis who disagree with me, but I think that would unlock a lot of good feeling. But I come back to my original point. The people in Israel, and I'm talking about the people on the ground. I have sons that live there now. Nobody in Israel believes that there's anybody on the other side who actually wants to come to the table and make peace. That's the number one problem.
Well, one comment I want to interject.
In Israel believes that.
I want to actually interject on the issue of Al-Quds, part East Jerusalem. It was offered to the Palestinian Authority by Ehud Barak and was rejected by the Palestinian Authority. So Israel even did put that on the table as an effort, and not all Israelis, terms like all Israelis, it's not really accurate, because there are Israelis that celebrated with Palestinians and were happy with Palestinians of their status of observer state. So it's not really an accurate term to say that all Israelis are, reacting in a different manner. I really have to disagree with that.
Well, I disagree with that too. There are some wonderful Israelis out there. There are a minute minority. I have great admiration for Israeli activists. I know they're facing a very hard time. They're often being disowned by their own families. Sometimes they have problems getting jobs or getting licenses. There's a lot of harassment going on. Right. Yeah, but I'm talking about Israel now.
Yes, but Israelis.
My point. Yeah, I gave you the time before. But you were talking about all Israelis and the concept of that. But the truth is that the majority of Israelis keep electing governments that claim very clearly that they're going to continue the settlement policy, which means that the ethnic cleansing of Palestine is intended to go on. And under those circumstances, I think it's very hard for Palestinians to say, yes, we want peace. Palestinians generally do want peace, but of course, living as third-class citizens under military rule creates a lot of hatred. In my country, in Denmark, there was when I grew up, there was a lot of anti-German sentiment. All through my youth, Germans were seen as crazies and authoritarian Nazis, and we had like 5 years of occupation. 1,000 people died. It was a walk in the park compared to the Israeli occupation of Palestine, but it does leave a big psychological footprint. And of course, all the murder, demolitions, and humiliations, the robberies going on now all the time leaves a big footprint. And then to sit back at the same time to say we don't understand why the Palestinians hate us, it's not really difficult to understand.
Great.
The issue of electing specific governments is the Israeli people have a choice on who they elect, and if they are continuing to elect a certain government, it's a democratic process. Comes to power, and the government has to hold that position once they receive the election. So in the case of settlements, most right-wing view, they don't view that as settlements. They're viewing that they are building homes on their own land, as anyone in the United States would build a new house in any state of the Union of the United States of America. So they don't see it as ethnic cleansing. Ethnic cleansing to me is defined like when there is a conflict between one group of people and they are systematically targeting a group for annihilation and actually carrying that out. So building a settlement, I don't understand how that term is used as ethnic. It really does not make sense to use that term.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense if you believe that you own the land already, but it's only Zionists who believe that. Nobody else believes it. And I think that let me just finish, since you just made the point. You might, you're wondering right now, or before, I don't know if it's you, Richie, why do the extreme Palestinians say they want to drive us into the sea? You think you own the land because you owned it like 1,500, 2,000 years ago, a small part of it. The Palestinians own the land 70 years ago? Of course they're bitter about it. Of course they see it as their land. But you see them as fanatical because one of you, but you want to argue that building settlements is not ethnic cleansing. It's a completely normal point of view because you used to live there hundreds of years ago.
So Zemira,
although this land has primarily been Arab all through history.
Well, so what I was going to say is, Richie.
Extreme point of view. It's a very extreme point of view.
Richie, you already mentioned, Richie, that you think that the settlement should stop, and so I think I know your opinion on what Rune's saying there. You probably have some common ground with him, if I'm correct. But Zemira, on your end, I mean, do you hear where Rune's coming from? Where before 70, 80 years ago, there were Palestinians living on their land, and they were bitter that they were forced to leave, or some of them left on their own, whatever it might be. And the fact that, although it seems like you're just building settlements and it looks, perfectly normal, like a normal country would do, people would call Palestinians being fanatical for, being disturbed by it and having a problem with it. But then again, like, they're mad because it's kind of like beating around the bush. Like, instead of just coming out and saying, like, you're not going to be allowed on your land, like, you're just going to build settlements on the land and not allow them to live inside of it. Do you kind of see how it seems to be beating around the bush a bit, Zemira?
I don't see that it's beating around the bush at all, because of the fact that Israel did not cause the Palestinian problem, and Israel is often blamed for causing that. So as far as building in Judea and Samaria, the Jewish point of view is thousands of years of consistent existence in the land. And basically, Palestinians are claiming Arab existence. But why are Palestinians not being assisted and helped in a positive manner by their Arab neighbors? And why are Palestinians discriminated against even in Arab countries? And not given medical care and not given near the opportunity or the chance to coexist peacefully as they do in Israel.
But then
these are questions to ask.
But removing people from their land is not giving them a chance to coexist peacefully. It's got nothing to do with coexisting peacefully when you keep annexing other people's lands.
But it's not other people's lands from the Jewish perspective. It's not other people's lands. It's
you can't have a perspective that land other people own. Yeah, you can't have that perspective. It's an impossible perspective. Nowhere in international law is it possible to have a perspective like that. It's a war crime.
International law does not apply on this issue. First of all, the issue is that why cannot both peoples, as Richie said, he gave a suggestion. Why cannot Israelis, Palestinians both claim a capital? We are looking for solutions. We are talking about solutions to move forward rather than arguing whose land it belongs to. Okay?
We can change into that discourse. It hasn't been a discourse until now, but I'm willing to change into it, no problem.
No, my discourse has been viable solutions, as Max had suggested of our conversation be.
Well, let's talk about it, sure.
Okay.
Go. So who wants to start? I mean, viable solutions. Because I will not lie, I mean, personally, hearing a lot of the discussions, I think, in terms of history, it really turns into a difficult conversation to have because everyone seems to have their own interpretation of history, which is fine, but it really doesn't bring you very far. I don't know if, if you guys agree with that point or not. But, in terms of then going forward and, kind of pushing the history to the back burner for a bit, if you had to, drop history and determine what is the best route to take forward at the present date, February 9th, 2013, when we're really in a much different time than we were, let's say, 50 years ago, what would be, what would be each of your approaches to, resorting in some sort of peace deal or solutions? Is it an all-in-one solution? Who wants to? Richie, you haven't spoken in a little bit, so why don't you go?
I'm busy listening to this interesting discussion. All I would say is I think there's an underlying desire, definitely on the part of Israel. And Rune will hate what I'm going to say now, but I mean, he lived. I don't know if he lived in Israel. He lived in Israel before. But I think living in Hebron, you probably get a bit of a distant view, because you're in probably the most controversial place in that part of the world.
I've been to other places
in Israel proper, if you like. But living in Israel proper, I honestly believe great desire from the people, the general Israeli population, to make peace and to let the Palestinians have a state. The question is, how do you do it? And again, you've got to rein in the militants from Hamas who end up declaring all the time they want to drive Israel into the sea. There needs to be a moderate voice of Islam in Palestine, and it's very difficult to see it from the Israeli perspective. They do not see it. It's a shame. I mean, Saeb Erekat, for example, was an amazing orator. In a time where he was at the discussions at the Galilee, that I remember quite clearly, it was quite a few years back, but he was an amazing orator. And now he's also going, very anti the whole process. It's a real shame. I think having Jerusalem as a split capital is not a problem. I think if it was put to the vote or referendum in Israel, I think it would go through. They have to find a way of dividing the West Bank and giving the Palestinians the territory that they can call. Sorry, I didn't hear you, Rune.
Oh, I just said there's been polls on Jerusalem, and the majority of Israelis reject giving the Palestinians East Jerusalem. It's been polled within these last 6 months. The question of Jerusalem. That's a very high-profile poll.
Okay, I'm not aware of that. And what was the result?
Okay. I can't remember the percentages, but it was a solid no. Very, very large majority of Israelis do not favor negotiation on Jerusalem.
So do you think that is? Do you think that's where the?
I mean, my position there is therefore.
Do you think that's where the core root of? Do you think that's where one of the core roots of the problem exists, Zemira? If there's going to be no negotiation on Jerusalem, which is, such a shared, it's a shared religious capital of the world. I mean, do you think it's wrong on Israelis' part to not want to, if they're really serious about a solution here, that they should be willing to maybe budge on that issue, Zemira?
Well, as I explained before, East Jerusalem was offered to Palestinians and rejected at one point in time, and it was rejected. I think the core issue is exactly as Richie has stated, that that the ultimate goal of Palestinians is for an enduring, viable peace, where we have two nations living side by side in peace. That's what the Israelis are not seeing. That is what the problem is.
I mean, Rune, Palestine has just redesigned its flag, which is now on education books, all its flags and everything, which shows Palestine is including Tel Aviv, Haifa, Jerusalem, Modi'in. The whole of Israel has now become Palestine.
Yes, that is an issue.
And on the ground, the whole of Palestine has now become Israel. There's a big difference between what you do on the flag and what you do on the ground. And I just heard Zemira say that it's okay to do it on the ground because they don't see it like that. They think it's their territory, therefore they should be allowed to take it. That's a lot more radical than doing a flag. Of course, one is a function of the other. The possibility of actually having a viable solution disappears when you radicalize people. At the PA, Abu Mazen, he recognized Israel. He said, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to negotiate. Now from the Palestine papers, he negotiated practically in a way. What he got from, he was certainly the partner in peace that Zemira and Richie are talking about. What he got for his troops was 500,000 settlers, which is a very aggressive move. It's not being a partner in peace in any way.
So where are the Israeli citizens supposed to live? Where are the Israeli citizens supposed to live? Where? If you are uprooting them from the areas that you call settlements, this is our homes, and we are being uprooted from our homes. There has been there has been Israeli government action in the south to move Israelis out of their home. So you are saying you don't want Palestinians to be uprooted from their homes? where will the Israelis go and where will they live? Do
But
they
the
have
Israelis
entitlement to growth? Do they have entitlement to growth too as a nation?
You can't. No, nations don't grow. Denmark is not about to grow into Germany. It doesn't work that way, Zemira. You can't grow into other people's property and still completely be in complete
But this is
international.
not
It's a big
people's
misunderstanding.
property is the point.
Yes, it's legally their property. It's actually
legally
other people's property.
1948, Israel was established, okay, as a nation. And that was granted to Israel by the United Nations. So
Yes,
it's
but-
not legally
yes.
Palestinian land, it's
2
legally
points.
Israeli land.
Legally was granted to Israel on the condition that indigenous people were not to be uprooted. Legally, the settlements are being built are being built on what you call settlements. It's being built outside the Green Line Israel, so it's got nothing to do with 1948. It's got nothing to do with 1948. You're mixing everything together, and it's not working. It's not making sense.
It was actually Jordan who occupied that territory from 1948 to
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
They along with all the rest of the Arab countries, then in 1967 decided to get together and try and drive Israelis into the sea, and Israel won
Correct.
the war. And
Correct.
it was only
No,
after
yeah,
then,
no.
really, Jerusalem became undivided.
Rune, what's your...
No, yeah.
That's historically
Go ahead, Rune.
No, historically, in 1967, Israel launched a preemptive strike against Egypt, after which they went on and annexed the West Bank. Now, we have, these are all established facts. You can read Nico Pellet's books to hear his lectures. This is the son of an Israeli general who was part of this history, who witnessed it with his own eyes. He said exactly how it went on. He said that there was a meeting between the generals and the government, and said, we have a great opportunity now because the Egyptians aren't ready for war. They've launched a preemptive strike. It was a war of attack, if you want to look into the history of it. But even so, even if this myth was right that you were attacked, it doesn't give you the right to colonize land. You're not entitled to colonize land that you gained in the course of war. And in terms of whether it was legitimate, whether it belonged to Jordan or Palestine, the international court has ruled on this. It's still occupied land, and you're not allowed to colonize.
Wait, so Rune, just because I'm a little confused, Rune. So then, what's supposed to happen to that land once you get it? What's supposed to happen to it? I'm just missing what am I missing? Once you get it in a war, then
I think you're missing the fact that under international law, under the Fourth Geneva Convention, you're not allowed to acquire territory by war. It's actually not allowed.
So what?
I know it's a foreign country for you, but that's the law.
Okay. I guess I'm just when you think about history in general.
Well, I wonder whether the Arabs abided by that law when actually their goal in 1967 was to basically take over the whole of Israel and drive all the Jews into the sea. I don't think they were paying too much attention to the Geneva Convention then.
Where in history are we now? I'm sorry, I lost the first bit, Richie.
All right. Well, so what I...
You're saying about 1967, you're saying you can't get terrorists from war. The whole purpose of the 1967 and the same as the 1948 attack was basically to...
Whose attack are you referring to now?
The Jewish state. That was the...
Guys,
yes.
to keep it away from the history debate, because once again, it's everyone seems to have their own interpretation of who did what opportunity.
It's not interpretation.
It's definitely
not controversial to talk about who launched the war. Israel was the first to go into war in 1967. They called it a preemptive strike. This is a fact.
Right. So here's what I want to ask. I mean, we can continue this discussion by all means. We've been going for about an hour and 10 minutes, and if you guys want to continue, I'm more than fine with it. I don't know if ultimately what I was going to ask is, being forward thinking, because I thought we were making some interesting ground before. What thing do you want to see immediately? Implemented. If you could implement something tomorrow, one thing to promote. If you're at the negotiating table, what thing are you demanding of the other opposing side? And you have to drill down on one item, that you find crucial. Zemira, do you want to go ahead towards a peace deal? That is.
The peace deal that I would ask for is a long and enduring peace between both neighbors. I would demand that.
But what is one specific thing that you want to see? Are you saying like a two-state solution, or are you saying just like like a halt on all violence on both sides and whatever happens happens? Like I want to.
The most immediate right now would be to stop the violence on both sides right now.
Okay,
that's what I would ask.
And how does that happen on the Israeli front? Talk about your front. How does that happen on your end? What needs to happen for Israelis to end violence against Palestinians? Because I want to kind of have you talk about your own side, because I think it makes it a little bit tougher and it gets us closer to what we're both trying to achieve here.
Well, I think that if the Palestinians are uncomfortable with certain actions of Israelis, and that we know what those discomforts are, that we stop those actions will create misunderstanding and offense.
Right. Okay. And Rune, you're at the negotiating table. What one thing do you want to see happen tomorrow that you think would really put a major dent into some progress forward with a peace deal?
First of all, I don't feel comfortable negotiating on the part of Palestinians, even in rhetoric. I think they've been colonized enough. I don't want to colonize their resistance as well. I do sympathize with the part of Palestinians that would say, well, let's work for one democratic state in Israel and Palestine, and find an equal rights system for everybody there. One large democratic state with equal rights for all. States that favor a certain ethnic group or a certain religion, this is something of the past. This belongs to another age, and things that belong to another age are very destructive when humanity has moved on from that. And the Israel-Palestine conflict is a very good example of that. So my sympathies lie. I wouldn't. In terms of what Zemira said, again, I can't acknowledge, I've seen too much with my own eyes to acknowledge this even discourse that you have misunderstandings and two sides being violent toward each other. We have a very massive violent occupation, violent massive oppression that is largely being responded to with mostly by completely non-violent means, sometimes by the symbolic act of throwing rocks, and sometimes by rockets without explosives. And of course, I would love to live in a world without violence, but you can't say to a people that are oppressed on this level, that's being driven out literally from their homes, that have their homes demolished around them, humiliated. You can't talk to them about, teach them about violence. Walk a mile in their shoes, then teach them about violence.
Okay, and Richie.
Okay, I would. I think the major thing that Netanyahu needs to come to the table with is, and he can't do it because if what Rune is saying is correct, and I have no reason to disbelieve it, that the majority of Israelis would not be prepared to put East Jerusalem on the table for negotiation. But that, to my point of view, would be the first step. Say that they would no longer consider that Jerusalem would have to remain undivided. I think that would help. The problem is, Rune, Israel's dealing with two Palestinian authorities that don't even talk to each other. They're busy killing each other as well. I mean, there's a lot more violence between Hamas and Fatah than there is between Israel and Israel and Hamas and Israel and Fatah as well. I mean, I've seen so many videos of people getting thrown off roofs and people getting killed and torture and all the rest of it. These are two authorities. They're two completely kind of miles apart. It's just amazing. How do you? Who are Israel negotiating with? Are we negotiating with Hamas for a Palestinian state? Are we negotiating with Fatah for a Palestinian state? Are we negotiating with both? Abbas doesn't have a mandate to be the president of the Palestinian Authority for I think 5 or 6 years now. He has no authority to be there. Where's the democracy? Who is Israel supposed to be making peace with? Are we making peace with Hamas? Are we making peace with? Are we trying to build a state for Hamas? We're trying to build a state for Fatah? What are we doing? I mean, the current view of Israel is that Hamas is a terrorist organization and it can't be spoken to, so that leaves Fatah. Okay, so what happens to Gaza then? Will Fatah take over Gaza? Will Fatah be part of a Palestinian state? So many questions unanswered. I still think the opening point is Jerusalem. Obviously, I think that would be the break. I would imagine that could be the breakthrough. And Netanyahu saying again, we'll halt construction of the settlements. I mean, Zemira, I have to. I've got lots of friends in Palestine, which is just outside Jerusalem in the disputed area. It's an amazing city, and how do you uproot people from a city? 25,000 people there. It's not like Gaza. With Gaza, they uprooted a few thousand, which was bad enough as it was. I don't know how you do it. Honestly, I don't know how you do it. It's not an easy question.
I don't believe that the uprooting of any people is a positive thing by any means, and certainly my own family members have been uprooted. So, by any means, I would hope that there will be efforts to change that policy on both sides.
Great. All right. So
because I believe that both sides are responsible.
No, totally.
There are two people in a conflict, not only one.
No, totally. And I think you both did all three of you did a good job of answering, that difficult question. Would you guys like to, continue? Because we can keep going. I thought, Rune brought up something interesting. I thought I heard him bring up the religious item before, and maybe, that kind of needs to be taken out of the picture to foster some peace. But I mean, we have been speaking for almost an hour, 20 minutes. We're fine with continuing to speak.
I can't help thinking, I'm sorry for interrupting you, Max. Also for personal reasons in my end, this may be the place to stop it.
Okay.
Because we've had a feeling of where everyone is, how we're positioned, and it's easy to open a lot of doors from this point too. And I don't have that much time.
Yeah.
I also actually need to.
All right, great. So, guys, thank you so much for your participation. This was great. I think our viewers enjoyed. I think our viewers enjoyed the discussion because there was a lot of text comments coming in there, but too much to be able to handle on my end. So, I thank you guys for your time, and I hope you enjoyed your discussion here on Vonvo today.
Yes, I did,
Thank you.
Nice to meet you and Rune and Richie, and have a pleasant day, everyone.
All right, great.
Yes. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
You too.